I preach one message on this in our afternoon service. It sometimes is a little difficult to preach on subjects such as this. It is about the destruction of Jerusalem and the second coming of Jesus Christ. And I'll seek to present it before you in a way that can be easily understood, I trust, and but we'll need you to follow as we go through this today. I've entitled this The Destruction of Jerusalem and the Day of Christ's Second Return. I would like to read the chapter in its entirety. Mark chapter 13. And as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples saith unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here? And of course they're looking at the temple, you see. And Jesus answering said unto him, Seest thou these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives over against the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign when all these things shall be fulfilled? And Jesus answering them began to say, Take heed, lest any man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end hath not yet come. But the end shall not be yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in divers places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginning of sorrows. But take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to councils, and in the synagogues ye shall be beaten, and ye shall be brought before the rulers and kings for my sake, and for a testimony against them. And the gospel must first be published among all nations. But when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought beforehand what ye shall speak, neither do ye premeditate whatsoever shall be given you in that hour. That speak ye, for it is not ye that speak, but the Holy Spirit. Now the brother shall betray the brother to death, and the father the son, and the children shall rise up against their parents, and shall cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. But when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. And let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house, neither enter therein to take anything out of this house. And let him that is in the field not turn back again for to take up his garment. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. And pray ye that your flight be not in the winter. For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from creation, the beginning of the creation which God created unto this time, neither shall be. And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved, but for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he hath shortened the days. And then if any man shall say to you, Lo, here is Christ, or Lo, he is there, believe him not. For false Christ and false prophets shall rise, and shall show signs and wonders, and to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. But take ye heed, behold, I have foretold you all things. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with glory and power, and with great power and glory. And then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass till all these things be done. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. But of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. Take ye heed, watch and pray, for ye know not when the time is. For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants, and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. Let me begin by asking you a question. Have you ever had to say to someone speaking to you, what are you talking about? That's something my wife, because I have little conversations in my head, and then I jump out and say something, and she says, what are you talking about? You know, when the subject matter is not clearly stated, when the context is not well defined, what is said just doesn't make sense. And you probably have done that to people, and people have done that to you. But there's another reason we might ask, what are you talking about? And that's when we lack knowledge in the subject matter the person is talking about. Now, as I read through this, I venture to say that this was somewhat confusing for you to hear and discern. And that is that most Christians know next to nothing about the Old Testament prophecies of the destruction of Jerusalem, and know little of the pronouncements of Jesus made that Jerusalem would be destroyed in his generation. Did you note in verse 30? Look at verse 30 so you clearly understand. Verily I say unto you that this generation shall not pass till all these things be done. Now we're going to show you how that he is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. He then talks about his coming when he talks about the tribulation after that, and we'll explain that. This is actually mentioned in in Matthew and in Luke. We'll read some of those passages. But let me first of all quote to you a primary verse in understanding the prophecy of the destruction of Jerusalem. You see when he began. Now look at verse 1. Let's put it in the context. Look at verse 1. And as he went out of the temple, and one of his disciples said unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. And Jesus answering said unto him, Seest thou these great buildings? He's talking about the temple of Herod, which is the refurbishing of the temple of Ezra and them. And we find here, there shall not be left one stone upon another, that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives over against the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, Tell us, when shall these things be? Now what did he just talk about? The temple being destroyed. And what shall be the sign when all these things shall be fulfilled? Now in the context, he's talking about the destruction of the temple. He's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem that's prophesied. Now he interweaves this at the end and distinguishes his coming with this. And let me just up front help you. The destruction of Jerusalem had definite signs. Definite signs. The second coming does not have definite signs. When he got down, but of this day and this hour knoweth no man, he's talking about his coming. The first distinction we need to understand is that the destruction of Jerusalem would happen in the lifetime of Christ, that generation it is, not his personal lifetime, but that generation. And it had specific signs that were told so that they knew when it was coming. The second coming, we do not know when it will happen, but it is indeed the consummation of all things. Now listen, this is from Daniel 9:26. And after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with the flood. And unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Daniel gave a time prophecy, 70 weeks of years, 490 years. I don't have time to develop everything, but He says after 69 weeks. Here it says 62. But he gave it in the increments of 7 weeks to rebuild the temple, then 62 weeks added to that to make a total of 69 unto the Messiah. And he said after, meaning you're in the 70th week. So when John the Baptist and gospel times began, it was the beginning of the 70th week of the prophecy of Daniel. The prophecy says that in the midst of the week, the Messiah would be cut off. How long was Jesus' ministry? 3.5 years. He was cut off not for himself, but to confirm the covenant. The covenant is the new covenant of his blood. He confirmed it for many, meaning the elect of God. He said that sacrifice and offering would cease. What happened when he died? No longer any sacrifice. Now they went on and did things, but he caused it to cease. And what was written in the temple? The veil was written in twine. It was written in two, opening up the way to God, you see. And so this prophecy brings us up to this week of Jesus' ministry. And in this ministry, Jesus pronounces that within his generation, the destruction of those who crucified him, as they had done to the prophets, that they would be, great vengeance would come upon them. Let me quote some passages. This is out of Luke, chapter 21. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive unto all nations. That happened. God's providence raised up a man called Josephus, who wrote, he was a historian and an eyewitness that wrote an account that's been preserved to today. It is not inspired, but it is good historical record, and he verifies these very things happen. You see, now let's go to the Gospel of Matthew. Mark your place, we'll come back, but go with me to Matthew 23. Once again, this prophecy is about the destruction of Jerusalem. It was prophesied in the Old Testament. Jesus is here in Mark 13 prophesying in his time that you're not going to see. You see this beautiful temple? Within my life, within the generation in which you now live, not one stone is going to be upon another. Great distress and persecution. He tells them, when you see the armies compass about the city, that's the desolation. You see, Luke was a Gentile. In Matthew and Mark, he talks about the abomination of desolation, but Luke, being a Gentile, explains it. The armies are the Roman armies. And so what happened in 67, 68 AD, Vespasian, a Roman general, came. He surrounded the city. He was ready to destroy Jerusalem. And Nero died, and some things started taking place in Rome. He had to go back to Rome. So here he was ready to destroy the city. They saw the armies compass about the city, and those that knew what Jesus said, guess what they did? They fled to the mountains. You see, normally if you're going to be attacked, where do you flee? You flee into the city. Jerusalem had great walls. They had great protection. The natural thing was to flee in the city. He said, don't flee in the city. Don't flee into Judea. Flee to the mountains. Because these are the days of vengeance. The cumulative judgment of God was going to fall upon the Israel as a nation. For their, God from the very beginning gave them blessings and he gave them cursings. And he said, just as I've given you blessings, I'll give you cursings and curse you off this land that you're on. You see. And so this is what Jesus was spoken of. And those that knew the sign, when they saw the armies of Vespasian, they fled because God gave them time. Vespasian went back to Rome. He was made emperor, and he sent Titus back then in 70 AD to be the general, and that's when they were destroyed. Josephus said there was 1,100,000 killed. There was 90,000 taken captive. It was a great destruction. Now look at Matthew 23. Let's begin at verse 31. Matthew 23 and begin at verse 31. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers. Now here's the idea. Remember when God gave the prophecy to Abraham? He was going to be a stranger in a strange land. He said, I'm not destroying the Amorites yet, because their sin is not full. God is patient. God is long-suffering. And what he is saying is the nation of Israel had sinned. They had killed the prophets. They had stoned them and killed them. They rejected God's message. And the final fulfillment of their transgression was the crucifixion of Christ. They have filled up their transgression to the point that it was time for wrath. Look at verse 33. He seals them. Ye serpents, ye generations of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? Now look at this. Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets, wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify. Some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. Verily, now look at this, congregation, verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. The ones to him speaking. Then he says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and you would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate, God forsaken. He pronounces this. Note, he said, all the righteous blood shed upon the earth from Abel, the first martyr, to the last martyr in the Old Testament, mentioned in the book of Chronicles, is Zacharias was martyred. So he names the first and last martyr of the Old Testament, and he tells them that you're going to be killing those and scourging in your synagogues. Now look at the clause. Look at verse 35. That's a purpose clause. In other words, in verse 32, fill ye then up the measure of your fathers. And in verse 34, I've sent these unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and you'll kill them, you'll scourge them in your cities, that, verse 35, upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. This generation, in other words, 70 AD was the cumulative judgment of God upon the nation of Israel. This is what he's telling them. This is what we see here. Now, as we continue here, note very carefully verse 36, very important. Verily I say unto you, all these things, what he had just been talking about, shall come upon this generation, the generation to whom he's speaking. And it did. He was crucified in 33 AD, and within a generation, in 70 AD, it was fulfilled and completely destroyed. The temple was completely destroyed, you see. Now, in Mark chapter 13, verses 1 through 4, Jesus clearly answers, and go ahead and go back there, Mark 13, we're going to read a few verses. Jesus clearly answers the two questions. The two questions are when and what. For time's sake, I'm just going to read chapter 13, verse 4. Look at chapter 13, verse 4. Tell us, when shall these things be? The destruction of the temple. And what shall be the sign when all these things shall be fulfilled? So Jesus then answers their question. And please understand the distinction. Brother Danny, could you give me a thing of water or something? Is there? Okay. Thank you. I got one. Can I sing like Buddy now? Drinking after him. Brother Isaac, he said, I want to take something out of Brother Hunt's playbook in Sunday school. He said, I'll sing a song. And I thought, well, it's a different book because I'm thinking Isaac could sing and I can't. But what you want to see is he answers this question. There is a clear, definitive answer to when the destruction of Jerusalem will come. In contrast to that, at the end of the chapter, he says, but of that day and hour knoweth no man. That's the distinction. Clear signs, no sign. Okay? Now, look at this. Let's read and go through these. Look at 5 through 8 of Mark 13. And Jesus answering them began to say, take heed, lest any man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end shall not be yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in divers places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginning of sorrows. Now, if you note clearly, these are just general characteristics of the times. He said, the end will not be yet. He said, these are the beginning of sorrows, which is actually the word for for the pangs of childbirth. In other words, these are the characteristics of the age. So he's telling them, basically warning, don't take these as specific signs. This is the way it's going to be. And if you read Josephus, there were those that rose up and deceived the people and said God's going to give a great deliverance, just like he said here. Now with Google, you can search and even zero it in. You don't even have to go and read the whole book and make notes like I had. Well, not the whole book, but read sections years ago and made notes. You can do it through Google. But here the idea is he's giving here some general signs. This is not the specific. But then he gets a little more specific in 9 through 13. Look at those. But take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to councils, and to synagogues ye shall be beaten, and ye shall be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them. And the gospel must be first published in all nations. But when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought beforehand what ye shall speak, neither do ye premeditate, but whatsoever shall be given you in that hour, that speak ye, for it is not that ye that speak, but the Holy Spirit. And then he talks about brother delivering up brother, and hatred and strife and so forth. Now, as we look at these are a little more specific, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm going to quote you Matthew 10:23, which is Matthew's account of what we just read. And Matthew 10:23 adds a very significant point, and I want you to hear it. I'll just quote it. You can write it down for a reference to look at later. Matthew 10:23. But when they persecute you in this city, flee ye into another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man be come. Till the Son of Man be come. Now he's not talking about the second coming. He's talking about coming in judgment upon Israel. So he said in what we just read, one of the signs dealing with the when and the what, he tells them that they are going to persecute you in the synagogue. Flee. Go from there, flee to another city. And then when they persecute, flee to another city. You will not have gone through the cities of Israel before the Lord returns. So you see how it begins to limit it. The time it takes you to flee from this city and then flee and so forth, before you flee to all the cities, the Son of Man will become. So it's narrowing it down to that generation in which they're living. And then we find another one. And a lot of people, you have to let the Bible interpret the Bible. Look with me now at chapter 13 and verse 10. And the gospel must first be published among all nations. Now, there are people that are still dealing with that. this is in the context as a sign on the destruction of Jerusalem. And so you have people, matter of fact, a lot of these things that he tells us, which are general characteristics of the age, everybody shows that as signs for the Lord's coming. But these are just general characteristics of the age, and then he gave the specific ones to them as to going about Jerusalem, fleeing, and the Lord would be back before they could go to all the different cities, fleeing the persecution. But what about the gospel? Well, listen to this. I want to quote scripture here. This is Colossians chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. Colossians 1, 5 and 6. I'll just read it to you. The truth of the gospel, which is come unto you, those of Colossae, as it is in all the world, and bringeth forth fruit. Now the Bible says that it had already gone into all the world. You say, well, you know, it didn't go to the American Indian, it didn't do this and that. Well, God interprets the scripture. He was talking about the known world in which they were living, that it would go into all the world. And he said it did. Listen to Colossians 1:23. The gospel which ye have heard, and which was preached to every creature which is under heaven, whereof I, Paul, am made a minister. It was preached. The gospel went out. He was talking about the gospel reaching the known world. That's how our Lord meant that, because that's how it's interpreted in the epistles. And so we had the general characteristics of wars and so forth, and you go back in history, and of course they were there. You have a little more specific sign that you'll be persecuted and killed in the synagogues, flee to the other cities, and before you've gone to all the cities of Israel, the Son of Man will become, meaning in judgment upon the destruction, and then the gospel being preached to the known world. And we see that in the time of Paul, this had been accomplished. You see? And so this is the time frame that he's talking about. Now, let's go to the book of, we're in the book of Mark 14. Let's begin now at verse 14. Okay? Because now here is the specific sign. When shall these things and what? You see? Look at verse 14. But when ye shall see, they'll actually see this. Verse 14 of chapter 13. When you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not. Now look at this. Let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. This is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. We found that when we read in Luke's account, he said, when you see the armies compass about the city, know that the desolation is nigh. That's what the abomination of desolation is. It is the unclean, unholy Roman armies in the Holy Land, there by God to bring judgment and destruction upon Israel. He said, now when you see them compass the city, flee to the mountains. You see, normally everybody would flee inside the city. No, don't flee. The city's going to be destroyed. Don't flee. Flee to the mountains. And Vespasian came, and the Christians saw that sign, and they fled Jerusalem. They fled Judea. I'll read you what historian Josephus says in a minute concerning these things. And, or actually Eusebius, Josephus speaks on another matter. But they fled. They fled to a place in Perea called Pella, and they were not destroyed. But those that remained were destroyed. This pertains to history. It pertains to the destruction of Jerusalem. You see, this is the idea here. Now, when they would see the armies compass, they were to flee. Jewish historian of the first century, Josephus, records the destruction of Jerusalem and records it as a fulfillment of the prophecy of Daniel. This is a quote from his book published in 98 A.D. You can get it. It's called The Antiquities of the Jews. Listen to this quote. And he was a Jew. He wasn't necessarily a Christian. In the very same manner, Daniel also wrote concerning the Roman government, and that our country should be made desolate by them. All these things did this man leave in writing, as God had showed them to him, insomuch that such as read his prophecies and see how they have been fulfilled would wonder at the honor wherewith God honored Daniel, and may thence discover how the Epicureans are in error, who cast providence out of human life and do not believe that God takes care of the affairs of the world. If you read it, he sees in the destruction of Jerusalem the fulfillment of the prophecy of Daniel that I began the message with in chapter 9:26, that great wrath is upon the land, the city and the sanctuary will be destroyed. He saw that as fulfilled by the Roman armies under Titus when they destroyed Jerusalem, and he records that. You see, it's left to us as a historical record. Now, the fulfillment of Jesus' words in his generation, as he said, is a great confirmation of the truthfulness of his word. Now think with me. Could you prophesy in such a manner? During his lifetime, he said, now you see that temple? Within this generation, there's not going to be one stone on the other. In another place, he was speaking a parable, and it was obviously about them. The parable of the king calling and bidding people to his marriage of his son, and they did not come. And then he commanded his servants to go out and get guests, and they beat the servants. And then Jesus gives a response in Matthew 22:7. How would he respond? But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and he sent forth his armies and destroyed those murderers and burned up their city. You see, this is what Jesus said in regard to them. He knew of this prophecy. He understood it. And it was in that generation that came. Now, there is also another historian named Eusebius. He wrote this in his book, Historia Ecclesiastica, in chapter 5. He wrote between 312 and 317 AD. But the people of the church in Jerusalem had been commanded by a revelation vouchsafed to approved men there before the war, to leave the city and to dwell in a certain town of Perea called Pella. And when those that believed on Christ had come thither from Jerusalem, so that after the royal city of the Jews and the whole land of Judea had entirely been destitute of holy men, the judgment of God at last overtook those who had committed such outrages against Christ and his apostles. And so we have a historical record of this fulfillment of the destruction of Jerusalem. He gave them general characteristics of the age. He then gave them two more kind of some specificity in that he said that within the time frame it would take you to go throughout Israel, and then the gospel being preached to the known world. But then he gives an actual sign that they could see, you see. And this was to indicate, don't go into the city, flee. And the historical record said the Christians fled. And the city was greatly destroyed. Over 1 million were killed, and the city was greatly destroyed, you see. Now, go back to chapter 13, look at verse 14. I want to emphasize this again. And when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. You see, this is the context. The desolation were the armies. It was prophesied in the book of Daniel, and then Jesus prophesied their destruction. He said, weep not for me, but weep for you, because he knew what was coming upon them, you see. Now, let's look at something else here in chapter 14. And look at verse 24. He said, but in those days, these days of the destruction of Jerusalem, after that tribulation, after the destruction of Jerusalem, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. The stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, and from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. Now, this is talking about the second coming. Now, please understand, and this is where people get confused. He speaks of the destruction of Jerusalem. Then he tells us after that destruction, the Lord's coming. He even uses the word immediately in another context. So people, some critics say, well, now listen, the Bible's not true, even though he had just prophesied the destruction of Jerusalem, with great accuracy, because he has not come yet. But we have to understand something that's revealed right in this text. And I want you to see it. Very important. It'll help you understand if you see this. Go with me and look at verse 32. But of that day, and here he's talking about his coming, but of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son of Man, but the Father. Take heed, watch, pray, for ye know not when the time is come. See the word time? It's not chronos, it's kairos, season. It's not just that you don't know the time, you don't know the season, you don't know when the Lord's coming. Matter of fact, it just told us that Jesus didn't know. God had not revealed it, he had not exercised his divine nature. And so when Jesus is giving the word, when the Holy Spirit gives this, it leaves it open. Now, go down with me and continue reading. Verse 34, for the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or at the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. What I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. Now, here's the thing. Jesus gives a very clear pronouncement of the destruction of Jerusalem. In their mind, they often thought of that as the going into the kingdom age and the eternal. But Jesus lets them know that that's not going to be the case, that there is, you find in other passages, there is going to be some time there. We know, of course, from the epistles. Now, here's the thing. He gives an analogy. It's like someone has, the owner of a house has left his affairs to his stewards. He's gone into a far country. Now, he may come back between 6 and 9, between 9 and 12, between 12 and 3, and between 3 and 6. That's the 4 watches of the night. Now, he's not talking about being gone one day. He's just saying that he tells them to be prepared, be ready, because he could come back at any time. And so when you read the Gospels, it gives the appearance that after the destruction of Jerusalem, Jesus could come. And indeed he could. He could come the first watch. He could come the second watch. He could come the third watch. He could come the fourth watch. But Jesus himself did not know, so he leaves it open. He speaks with a sense of this expectancy. You see, the reason the servants watched, because they didn't know if he's coming the first watch, the second watch, the third watch, or the fourth watch. They did not know, you see. Now, listen as I quote from Matthew in regard to the second coming. For as in the days of Noah, for as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and they knew not until the flood came and took them away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So the Bible tells us, now we can know the general birth pangs, as he told them, wars, rumors of wars, all the different things that will arise, famines and various things, but the end is not yet. But he did not give us a specific sign, such as he gave them. He just told us to be ready. He said that he would come as his coming, that we should look for him. He said if a man knew what hour the thief was coming, he would have prepared himself. Go to the book of Revelation, chapter 16, and look at something, because this is often misunderstood. People say that Jesus coming as a thief in the night as though it meant that he's coming secretly. Well, his coming, we just read about clouds of glory. The trumpet of the Lord shall sound, a great voice, lightning as from one end of the heaven to the other. It's not going to be secret. So look with me in Revelation chapter 16, and look what he says here in verse 15. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth. This is 16:15 of Revelation. And keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. In this analogy, it is not that he'll come and steal and secretly go away. The idea is, if you know and prepare for the thief you're expecting. Go with me to 1 Thessalonians. Look here at 1 Thessalonians 5. He tells about the rapture, and there is a rapture coming, but it's the consummation of all things. We'll be caught up and escort the Lord to the earth to judge the world. But look at 1 Thessalonians 5 and beginning at verse 1. 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 1. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all the children of the light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as others, but let us watch and be sober. You see, this is what he's saying, that you watch, you're sober. The Lord's coming again, and we need to be prepared for his coming, his glorious coming, you see, that he speaks of. Now he gives an interlude. I don't know if we need to go back to that, but he gives an interlude in Mark 14 of talking about seeing a tree blossom in the summer. And basically, he's referring to being able to discern signs, but it's actually parenthetical because it's going back to the destruction of Jerusalem, because that's what he gave signs concerning. In this, he just said, be ready. We are to be ready. There is no if you right now have a great earthquake somewhere or another war starts somewhere, that is just characteristic of the times. We are just to be ready and be prepared, for the Lord is coming. But of that day and that hour knows no man. There's people that have written books about when he's going to come. They've misapplied this text and said that he would come within a generation after Israel was formed in 1948. There's various things that they've said. He gave two prophecies. The destruction of Jerusalem, which was fulfilled, that had specific signs, and his coming, which in his coming is as a thief in the night. Now, how many signs does a thief give? Does he call you at 8 o'clock? Hey, say, I'm coming tonight now, about 1:30. Does he put a billboard up, or what does he do? Does he run a radio advertisement? No, thieves just come unexpectedly. So how do you deter a thief? You're ready. You're prepared. You're watching. That's what he's saying. That's what we do concerning the Lord's coming. And just as the first coming came true in the destruction of Jerusalem, his glorious second coming. And he'll come at an hour when we think not. That's what he said. When no one seems to be expecting. And as the lightning from one end of the heaven to the other, the glory and majesty, and the Lord will return with all of his saints. And what a glorious thing that will be. So the question is, are you ready for his coming? Realize that when Jesus prophesied of the destruction of Jerusalem, it happened exactly as he said it. Those that heard his instruction fled. When the armies of Vespasian were there, they fled because the armies left. And they had opportunity to flee. And they fled to the mountains. And then Titus came, and it was during a time of the, I believe it was the Passover, a time of religious feast. All the people were fleeing into the city, and they let him flee. They let them flee into the city or go into the city. And then that's when the great destruction came. And so the question is today, are you ready for the Lord's coming? He could come today. We don't know. We don't know what watch we're in. The first, the second, the third, or the fourth. Jesus said, what I say to you, I say to all, watch. And if you're prepared, it's kind of like, I'll close with it, the one said, who is my neighbor? And Jesus told the parable of the one that fell among thieves. And the Levite came and the priest, they both passed by. And the Samaritan came, he went over and poured oil on him and helped him and took him to an inn and gave 2 pence to the innkeeper to take care of him. He said, which one of these was neighborly? Well, the Samaritan. See, the question is, are you looking for the Lord's return? Are you prepared for it? See, if you're looking and you're prepared, it's not going to catch you by surprise, because you know he's coming and you're waiting for him. And sometimes this world and its evil, we're surely groaning and waiting for him. Let's all stand, Brother Buddy, come.